Good evening and welcome back to the question and answer series for anash.org. I want to begin thanking the many people who keep on writing in their shalas and their questions, thanking them for sending it in, and I want to apologize for the people which I won't be able to answer all their questions this week, because it came in a lot of questions the last week or two and we are limited in time. But in Yirtzeh Hashem, through the following weeks, we will come to your questions in Yirtzeh Hashem and we'll get to it. Another thing which I want to mention, there's a big oilam. A lot of people are listening to the shiurim and are diversified people, so you have all kind of people are listening. That means Jews and non-Jews, even men and women, boys and girls. So I would like to ask all the people who are writing questions that they should consider before they're writing in the questions that we won't be able to address publicly at a public forum some questions which is not appropriate for a public forum. I will answer that via email how it was sent, but I won't be able to answer it on a public forum because not all the questions could be answered on a public forum. So at least you'll get an answer privately, but don't expect that all the questions that should be answered publicly, because not everything is for public consumption. And now we'll get to the questions which we received, and we'll go on. A follow-up question. Last week he spoke about coffee on the airplane. The question is now, what about coffee from an unkosher restaurant, from McDonald's, Starbucks, etc.? The answer is like this. We spoke specifically last week on airlines, because airlines, I know the system, I verified it, and also 2-3 weeks ago we spoke about coffees in a gas station, which is basically a very simple coffee machine. But when you come to a restaurant, an unkosher restaurant, over there you're going into serious problems. Because over there they do use other kind of utensils, they use dishes, they wash it together with not really non-kosher dishes. So when you're talking about coffee, consuming coffee from a restaurant, which is a treifa restaurant, you cannot use that. Only from the airplanes, because they have a specific, the way how to make coffee, specific coffee maker. The same will go also to gasoline stations. So therefore, you could use. But when you're talking about restaurants, you shouldn't use it if it has non-hechsher at all. Question. Are we allowed to move to our new house after the tainus shavuos b'tamas? Same question is, are we allowed to use furniture that might arrive in the 3 weeks? May new countertops be installed during the 3 weeks? Moving in the 3 weeks is not a lekitchil, it's not kedai. So therefore, like the Rebbe writes in one of the letters, that you should put in stuff in the apartment before the 3 weeks. That means you already moved in before the 3 weeks. And then even though you are coming over to your apartment to sleep and bringing over the rest of the stuff in the 3 weeks, that's not considered moving in the 3 weeks, because you moved already before the 3 weeks. Regarding the other two questions, are you permitted to use furniture which will come in 3 weeks? Yes, there's no problem. The same will go to the third question, to install countertops in the kitchen. In the 3 weeks, you are permitted to buying stuff and using stuff. Things which you have to make a shechianu, you don't buy. That means new clothing, a new car, or these things. So we try not to buy. But a countertop to finish a kitchen, or furniture, etc., you could buy even in 3 weeks. Of course, not in the 9 days, but in the 3 weeks, you could buy it. Befrat, when you bought it beforehand and it's going to only arrive in 3 weeks, for sure there's no problem at all. Question. I like to braid my challahs, freeze them, and bake them as needed. When do I take challah? Okay, this is a little bit a complicated question, and we'll get to it momentarily. But first I want to say that you have, in order to take challah with a bracha, you have to have a shear. There's a machlokes what the shear is, but since we go to according to the shear of Rabbi Chaim Noah, so in order to make a bracha on a frushes challah, the shear is 3 pounds and 10.9 ounces. If it's less than that, if it's more than 2 pounds and 12.1 ounces, you take challah without a bracha. So from 2 pounds 12.1 till 3 pounds 10.9, you take challah without a bracha. If it's more than that, you take challah with a bracha. Now the question is like this. You are making a dough which has the shear challah. It means it is, let's say, 4 pounds. But you are going to divide it, braid it, divide it, freeze it, and you're going to take it out every Erev Shabbos, and then you're going to bake it. And when you're going to bake it, you're not going to have a shear, because if you bake it, you have the shear, so of course there's no problem. You're going to bake it, you don't have to have a shear. So there's a machlokes in Gemara, if a person makes a dough, amanas lachalek. That means you're making a dough in order to divide it afterwards in separate, bake it separately. Now, the Gemara over there talks about 5 ladies which give their dough to a person who makes yeast. He makes a dough, he makes it to become yeast, and then he gives it back for the people. Says, if somebody makes a dough in order to divide it, that means for the 5 people which gave him the dough, then you don't make it's not mechir b'challah. The Shlukish says it is mechir b'challah. Most of the poskim rishonim paskin like Rabbi Yochanan that you make a dough and it's to divide it, you don't need to take challah. But there's a machlokes, a poskim, what does it mean that you divide it? So there's 4 shittas. I don't want to go into all the 4 shittas, but some poskim say that is only if you divide it for 4, 5 extra people. You divide it for separate people which are not part of your household. Then you don't have to make challah. You take challah. But if you divide it for your own consumption, then you are mechiv to take challah. Other poskim say no. Even if you divide it for yourself, you put it in the freezer, and every week you take out a couple of challahs and you bake it and it doesn't have the shear, it's not mechiv b'challah because you made the dough in order to divide it. Again, so we have a machlokes if it means only when you divide it for other people or you divide it even for yourself. And there's other machlokes too. As kumas apoiskim is that whenever you divide it not for other people, just for yourself, you should take challah when you make the dough, even though it has a shear. Take challah without a bracha. Do not make a bracha then, because you're going into a suffolk, maybe you're not mechiv to take challah. So therefore, don't make a bracha. Suffolk bruch slehukl. When you have anything when it comes to a bracha, and you don't know if you need to make it, you don't need to make, you don't make a bracha. But to take challah, you should take challah and without a bracha, and then you could use it. Question. I put on by mistake my rashet film and made a bracha. Then I realized that I put on my Rabbeinu Tam and it wasn't my rashet film. I made the bracha. So I removed it afterwards and put on the rashet film, but did not make again a bracha. Was that the correct situation to handle it? Yes. When a person makes a mistake and he puts on his Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin and he makes a bracha, and then he realizes that it was his Rabbeinu Tam and it's not his rasha, so when he takes it off and he puts on right away afterwards his rashet film, he does not make a bracha. The Tshiva in Beshpetech Yankov, from Yankov, which he writes that there's a kabula from the Chassidim, from the Rebbe of Lublin, that a person who puts on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin every day, if he made such a mistake, he should not make another bracha when he puts on the rashet film. If he doesn't put on every day Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, only from time to time, and he made such a mistake, then he should make a bracha. Because that goes into Indian for Nimlach, then you should make a bracha. But if a person puts on every day Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, and once he made a mistake and he put it on before Rashi and he made the bracha on it, he should not make a bracha on Rashi tefillin. So he did the correct thing. It's interesting to note that he brings also the Mishpatecher Yankov, that there's a saying by Chassidim that a person which is makpet to put on tefillin, Rabbeinu Tam tefillin every day, mehashamayim, they're going to make sure that once in his lifetime he should make this kind of mistake and he should make a bracha on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. So basically, getting back to your question, yes, you did the correct thing. If it happens, you don't make again a bracha on Rabbeinu Tam if you put on tefillin Rabbeinu Tam on a daily basis. Question. I bought a 50-pound box of chicken bottoms. Several of them, the lower part of the legs was broken. Some of them have red spots. Are these problematic? The answer to this question is like this. When a person takes a bottom of the chicken and he sees that the bone is broken, if the bone was broken when it was alive, it's problematic. Might be treifa. Might be not, but it might be treifa. You're going into a suffolk, you have to ask a ریهوט, bring it to him and show it to him. If it happens after it was geschochten, then there's no problem. Now, most of the bones which is broken on a chicken which you buy in the store, most means ruba kekula, will happen after shchita. The machine which takes off the feathers has a big power, and that breaks a lot of times bones. Most of the time, it's from that machine. Chutz mezeh, otherwise there's a person who usually goes through the chickens and checks these things. But it could still happen, a broken bone, which happened when it was alive, and it's a problem of treifas. So the easiest thing to check it out, is to open it up and look at the bone. If the bone is broken, but it's clean, there's no blood around, not dried blood around the broken piece of bone, then pashtus is probably it happened from the machine. Because if it happened when it was alive, should have been dry blood around the bone. If he sees over there blood, or even if he sees on the meat blood, not a blood spot, but you see a hole and over there there's physical blood, then it means that it was happened when it was alive. So again, most of the time it will happen after the shchita, but you still gotta look for it. And you still, if you have a broken bone, you gotta look. So the easiest way is to do it, to rip apart that piece of meat, to check the bone, take out the bone, and see when it's broken. If it's clean, and there's no blood stains over there or around at the area, even though there is blood patches around, because all over it could be some kind of blood patch, but that's not blood, even though it's red, then you know it's from after shchita and you don't have to worry. If you see blood, physical blood or dried blood over there, you know it happened before the shchita, and then that chicken is non-kosher. Follow-up question. Last week you spoke about putting a challah on top of a pot of cholent. The question was, can I put a challah on an empty pot? The answer is yes. You could put, if you want to warm up your challah, you could take a pot out of your cabinet, turn it around, turn it over, and you could put on top of it the challah. It should become warm. As I mentioned last week, since it's a yuvish, it's dry, there's no bishul, there's no afia, since it was already baked, so there's no problem. So you could take a pot out of the cabinet and turn it over and put it on top of it. Now, although we hold, the poskim today's day hold that a pot is a keli shemalachta le'iser, that means it's a thing which is made only for iser, because in a pot you only cook. Once upon a time, the poskim write that a pot is not a keli, it's a keli shemalachta leheter. It's made for usable things on Shabbos. Because once upon a time they used to store food in a pot. Nowadays, when you have all kind of containers, plastic containers, nobody stores in a pot food. It's only made to cook. So automatically it becomes a keli shemalachta le'iser. So therefore it's muktzah. But the answer is, we know a keli shemalachta le'iser is still mitter if you use it to regifim and koyim. That means if you want to use it for a thing which is permitted, so there's no problem. So again, we're going back to the question. You could take out the pot, although it's mikzeh machmas, it's keli shemalachta le'iser, but since you want to use it to regifoy, it's not mikzeh. Question. I made a bracha berachas mutzie and did not eat yet. And I heard one of my family members making a bracha. Am I allowed to answer umain on his bracha? The answer is no, you cannot answer umain because it's a hefsek. And if you may answer umain, you have to make a bracha again. Because from making a bracha of a mutzie until eating, anything we say in the middle is going to be a hefsek. So therefore, if it has no shaykhs with the part of what you're going to do now. So saying a bracha, a omen, on somebody else's berachas mutzie or somebody else's halatilas yadayim, then it's a hefsek. But if you made berachas halatilas yadayim and you dried your hands and you're sitting down before making the mutzie, you hear somebody else making a bracha of halatilas yadayim, you could answer umain, there's no problem. But between hamotzi and eating, it's a hefsek. Question. Am I allowed to sharpen a knife, a milchige knife, on a knife sharpener which is fleischiks? The answer is, you could. If the sharpener is a dry sharpener, you have no problem using one sharpener for milchiks and fleischiks. And the truth is, you could even use it for a non-kosher knife too, if it's clean. Again, if everything has to be clean. If it's clean, the knives are clean, and you sharpen it only when it's clean, you have no problem. Because it's clean, so there's basically no problem of food. Now the question is, when you sharpen it, it becomes hot. The answer is, even though it becomes hot, we have a klal, ein bli yoytze mekayle lekayle b'lo roitev. That means pot which gets in taste in the pot. That means a pot which is basically fleischiks. And right next to it, you have a pot which is milchiks, and both are cooking, but there's no steam coming out. But they touch itself. That means you have a milchige pot cooking, a fleischige pot is cooking, and they touch each other, but there's no any water between them. So we say there's no problem, because the taste which is going into the milchige pot will not go into the fleischige pot without any liquid. So if you have two pots, one is milchig, one is fleischig, although it's hot, if there's no liquid between them, there's no problem. So coming back to our shala, you have a knife which is milchig. You have a sharpener which is basically fleischiks. I don't know how you come fleischiks, but let's assume it is fleischiks. And even though it's hot, but it's dry. So the blia, which is in the knife, will not go into the sharpener, and the same vice versa. But if you use water, because I think that some commercial sharpeners do have water, so then there's a problem. But if you don't have at least for treifas. But if you don't have, it's a dry one, you could use on the same knife sharpener for milchiks and fleischiks, and there's no problem. Question. I live in a town which there aren't a lot of Yidden, and most of the weekdays we have no minyan over there. I am Rahman al-Islam Uvel on one of my parents, and I don't have a minyan. Do I need to pay for Bocharam? They should come to me, be there during the weekdays in order that I should have a minyan to say Kaddish, or do I need to travel an hour and a half to the closest place where I have a minyan, which is a lot of headaches and it's on cheshm of afutz samayunas, or I don't need to do that, and what is the guidance? The answer is, a person is not mechiyev to spend a lot of etzuas and a lot of his time in his life for a minyan. There's a Matafraim, the famous Matafraim, in the back of his sefer, he has Hilchis Kaddish, and over there in Shar Gimel Siv Gimel he writes that a person should do only what he could do, and he has to take extra measures in order to say Kaddish on his father. So if you need to bring Bocharam, which is a big expense, they should stay by you all year, and sleep by you and have food by you, and they should want to stay and pay them, or you have to drive 3 times a day to a minyan, an hour and a half, 2 hours, you're not mechiv to do it. But if you're not mechiv to do it, at least make sure to give tzedukah and learn mishnayos, especially that you don't daven for him, at least learn mishnayos extra and give tzedukah, that at least his neshama should have an aliyah. Okay, we're going to stop here and we're going to continue Mitzvah Shem next week. And please send in your questions to inbox@anash.org. Good night.